1 Kings, chapter 11. Solomon's foreign wives. Now King Solomon loved many foreign women, together with the daughter of Pharaoh, women of the Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Sidonians, and Hittites, of the nations concerning which Yahweh said to the children of Israel, "You shall not go among them, neither shall they come among you, for surely they will turn away your heart after their gods." Solomon joined to these in love. He had 700 wives, princesses, and 300 concubines, and his wives turned away his heart. For it happened, when Solomon was old, that his wives turned away his heart after other gods, and his heart was not perfect with Yahweh his God, as was the heart of David his father. For Solomon went after Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and after Milcom, the abomination of the Ammonites. Solomon did that which was evil in the sight of Yahweh, and didn't go fully after Yahweh, as did David his father. Then did Solomon build a high place for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, on the mountain that is before Jerusalem, and for Molech, the abomination of the children of Ammon. So did he for all his foreign wives, who burnt incense and sacrificed to their gods. God's anger against Solomon. Yahweh was angry with Solomon, because his heart was turned away from Yahweh, the God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice, and had commanded him concerning this thing, that he should not go after other gods. But he didn't keep that which Yahweh commanded. Therefore Yahweh said to Solomon,
"Because this is done by you, and you have not kept my covenant and my statutes, which I have commanded you, I will surely tear the kingdom from you, and will give it to your servant. Notwithstanding, I will not do it in your days, for David your father's sake, but I will tear it out of the hand of your son. However, I will not tear away all the kingdom, but I will give one tribe to your son, for David my servant's sake, and for Jerusalem's sake, which I have chosen."
Hadad's return. Yahweh raised up an adversary to Solomon, Hadad the Edomite. He was of the king's seed in Edom. For it happened, when David was in Edom, and Joab, the captain of the army, was gone up to bury the slain, and had struck every male in Edom. For Joab and all Israel remained there 6 months, until he had cut off every male in Edom, that Hadad fled, he and certain Edomites of his father's servants with him, to go into Egypt, Hadad being yet a little child. They arose out of Midian, and came to Paran, and they took men with them out of Paran, and they came to Egypt, to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, who gave him a house, and appointed him food, and gave him land. Hadad found great favor in the sight of Pharaoh, so that he gave him as wife the sister of his own wife, the sister of Tahpenes the queen. The sister of Tahpenes bore him Genubeth, his son, whom Tahpenes weaned in Pharaoh's house. And Genubeth was in Pharaoh's house among the sons of Pharaoh. When Hadad heard in Egypt that David slept with his fathers, and that Joab, the captain of the army, was dead, Hadad said to Pharaoh, "Let me depart, that I may go to my own country." Then Pharaoh said to him, "But what have you lacked with me, that, behold, you seek to go to your own country?" He answered, "Nothing. However, only let me depart." Reason's hostility. God raised up another adversary to him, Rezon, the son of Eliada, who had fled from his lord Hadadezer, king of Zobah. He gathered men to him and became captain over a troop when David killed them of Zobah. And they went to Damascus and lived therein and reigned in Damascus. He was an adversary to Israel all the days of Solomon, besides the mischief that Hadad did, and he abhorred Israel and reigned over Syria. Jeroboam's rebellion. Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, an Ephraimite of Zeradah, a servant of Solomon, whose mother's name was Zeruiah, a widow, he also lifted up his hand against the king. This was the reason why he lifted up his hand against the king. Solomon built Millo and repaired the breach of the city of David his father. The man Jeroboam was a mighty man of valor, and Solomon saw the young man that he was industrious, and he put him in charge of all the labor of the house of Joseph. It happened at that time, when Jeroboam went out of Jerusalem, that the prophet Ahijah the Shilonite found him in the way. Now Ahijah had clad himself with a new garment, and they two were alone in the field. Ahijah laid hold of the new garment that was on him, and tore it in 12 pieces. He said to Jeroboam, "Take 10 pieces, for thus says Yahweh, the God of Israel, Behold, I will tear the kingdom out of the hand of Solomon, and will give 10 tribes to you. But he shall have 1 tribe, for my servant David's sake, and for Jerusalem's sake, the city which I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel. Because that they have forsaken me, and have worshipped Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, Chemosh, the god of Moab, and Milcom, the god of the children of Ammon. They have not walked in my ways, to do that which is right in my eyes, and to keep my statutes and my ordinances, as David his father did. However, I will not take the whole kingdom out of his hand, but I will make him prince all the days of his life, for David my servant's sake, whom I chose, who kept my commandments and my statutes. But I will take the kingdom out of his son's hand, and will give it to you, even 10 tribes. To his son will I give 1 tribe, that David my servant may have a lamp always before me in Jerusalem, the city which I have chosen me to put my name there. I will take you, and you shall reign according to all that your soul desires, and shall be king over Israel. It shall be, if you will listen to all that I command you, and will walk in my ways, and do that which is right in my eyes, to keep my statutes and my commandments, as David my servant did, that I will be with you, and will build you a sure house, as I built for David, and will give Israel to you. I will for this afflict the seed of David, but not forever." Solomon sought therefore to kill Jeroboam, but Jeroboam arose and fled into Egypt, to Shishak, king of Egypt, and was in Egypt until the death of Solomon. The death of Solomon. Now the rest of the acts of Solomon, and all that he did, and his wisdom, aren't they written in the book of the acts of Solomon? The time that Solomon reigned in Jerusalem over all Israel was 40 years. Solomon slept with his fathers, and was buried in the city of David his father. And Rehoboam his son reigned in his place. Chapter 12. Rebellion against Rehoboam. Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel were come to Shechem to make him king. It happened, when Jeroboam the son of Nebat heard of it, for he was yet in Egypt, where he had fled from the presence of King Solomon, and Jeroboam lived in Egypt, and they sent and called him. that Jeroboam and all the assembly of Israel came and spoke to Rehoboam, saying, Your father made our yoke grievous. Now therefore, make you the grievous service of your father and his heavy yoke which he put on us lighter, and we will serve you. He said to them, Depart for 3 days, then come back to me. The people departed. King Rehoboam took counsel with the old men who had stood before Solomon his father while he yet lived, saying, What counsel do you give me to return answer to this people? They spoke to him, saying, If you will be a servant to this people this day, and will serve them, and answer them, and speak good words to them, then they will be your servants forever. But he forsook the counsel of the old men which they had given him, and took counsel with the young men who had grown up with him, who stood before him. He said to them, What counsel do you give, that we may return answer to this people, who have spoken to me, saying, Make the yoke that your father did put on us lighter? The young men who had grown up with him spoke to him, saying, Thus you shall tell this people who spoke to you, saying, Your father made our yoke heavy, but make it lighter to us. You shall say to them, My little finger is thicker than my father's waist. Now, whereas my father burdened you with a heavy yoke, I will add to your yoke. My father chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scorpions. So Jeroboam and all the people came to Rehoboam the 3rd day, as the king asked, saying, Come to me again the 3rd day. The king answered the people roughly, and forsook the counsel of the old men which they had given him, and spoke to them according to the counsel of the young men, saying, My father made your yoke heavy, but I will add to your yoke. My father chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scorpions. So the king didn't listen to the people, for it was a thing brought about of Yahweh, that he might establish his word, which Yahweh spoke by Ahijah the Shilonite to Jeroboam the son of Nebat. The kingdom divided. When all Israel saw that the king didn't listen to them, the people answered the king, saying, What portion have we in David? Neither do we have an inheritance in the son of Jesse. To your tents, Israel! Now see to your own house, David. So Israel departed to their tents. But as for the children of Israel who lived in the cities of Judah, Rehoboam reigned over them. Then King Rehoboam sent Adoram, who was over the men subject to forced labor. And all Israel stoned him to death with stones. King Rehoboam made speed to get him up to his chariot to flee to Jerusalem. So Israel rebelled against the house of David to this day. Shimaya's prophecy. It happened, when all Israel heard that Jeroboam was returned, that they sent and called him to the congregation, and made him king over all Israel. There was none who followed the house of David, but the tribe of Judah only. When Rehoboam was come to Jerusalem, he assembled all the house of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin, 180,000 chosen men who were warriors, to fight against the house of Israel, to bring the kingdom again to Rehoboam, the son of Solomon. But the word of God came to Shimaya, the man of God, saying,
Speak to Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, king of Judah, and to all the house of Judah and Benjamin, and to the rest of the people, saying, Thus says Yahweh, You shall not go up, nor fight against your brothers, the children of Israel. Everyone return to his house, for this thing is of me.
So they listened to the word of Yahweh, and returned, and went their way, according to the word of Yahweh. Jeroboam's idolatry. Then Jeroboam built Shechem in the hill country of Ephraim, and lived in it. And he went out from there, and built Penuel. Jeroboam said in his heart, Now the kingdom will return to the house of David. If this people goes up to offer sacrifices in the house of Yahweh at Jerusalem, then the heart of this people will turn again to their Lord, even to Rehoboam, king of Judah, and they will kill me, and return to Rehoboam, king of Judah. Whereupon the king took counsel, and made 2 calves of gold. And he said to them, It is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Look and see your gods, Israel, which brought you up out of the land of Egypt. He set the one in Bethel, and the other put he in Dan. This thing became a sin, for the people went to worship before the one, even to Dan. He made houses of high places, and made priests from among all the people, who were not of the sons of Levi. Jeroboam ordained a feast in the 8th month, on the 15th day of the month, like the feast that is in Judah. And he went up to the altar. So did he in Bethel, sacrificing to the calves that he had made. And he placed in Bethel the priests of the high places that he had made. He went up to the altar which he had made in Bethel on the 15th day in the 8th month, even in the month which he had devised of his own heart. And he ordained a feast for the children of Israel, and went up to the altar to burn incense. Chapter 13. Jeroboam's hand withers. Behold, there came a man of God out of Judah by the word of Yahweh to Bethel, and Jeroboam was standing by the altar to burn incense. He cried against the altar by the word of Yahweh, and said, Altar, altar, thus says Yahweh, Behold, a son shall be born to the house of David, Josiah by name. On you he shall sacrifice the priests of the high places, who burn incense on you, and they will burn men's bones on you. He gave a sign the same day, saying, This is the sign which Yahweh has spoken. Behold, the altar will be split apart, and the ashes that are on it will be poured out. It happened, when the king heard the saying of the man of God, which he cried against the altar in Bethel, that Jeroboam put out his hand from the altar, saying, Seize him! His hand, which he put out against him, dried up, so that he could not draw it back again to himself. The altar also was split apart, and the ashes poured out from the altar, according to the sign which the man of God had given by the word of Yahweh. The king answered the man of God, Now entreat the favor of Yahweh your God, and pray for me, that my hand may be restored me again. The man of God entreated Yahweh, and the king's hand was restored him again, and became as it was before. The king said to the man of God, Come home with me, and refresh yourself, and I will give you a reward. The man of God said to the king, Even if you gave me half of your house, I would not go in with you, neither would I eat bread nor drink water in this place. For so was it commanded me by the word of Yahweh, saying, You shall eat no bread, nor drink water, neither return by the way that you came. So he went another way, and didn't return by the way that he came to Bethel. The prophet's disobedience. Now there lived an old prophet in Bethel, and one of his sons came and told him all the works that the man of God had done that day in Bethel. They also told their father the words which he had spoken to the king. Their father said to them, Which way did he go? Now his sons had seen which way the man of God went, who came from Judah. He said to his sons, "Saddle the donkey for me." So they saddled the donkey for him, and he rode on it. He went after the man of God, and found him sitting under an oak. He said to him, "Are you the man of God who came from Judah?" He said, "I am." Then he said to him, "Come home with me and eat bread." He said, "I may not return with you, nor go in with you. Neither will I eat bread nor drink water with you in this place. For it was said to me by the word of Yahweh, you shall eat no bread nor drink water there, nor turn again to go by the way that you came." He said to him, "I also am a prophet, as you are, and an angel spoke to me by the word of Yahweh, saying, Bring him back with you into your house, that he may eat bread and drink water." He lied to him. So he went back with him, and ate bread in his house, and drank water. It happened, as they sat at the table, that the word of Yahweh came to the prophet who brought him back. And he cried to the man of God who came from Judah, saying, "Thus says Yahweh, because you have been disobedient to the mouth of Yahweh, and have not kept the commandment which Yahweh your God commanded you, but came back, and have eaten bread and drunk water in the place of which he said to you, Eat no bread and drink no water. Your body shall not come to the tomb of your fathers." It happened, after he had eaten bread, and after he had drunk, that he saddled the donkey for the prophet whom he had brought back. When he had gone, a lion met him by the way, and killed him. His body was cast in the way, and the donkey stood by it. The lion also stood by the body. Behold, men passed by, and saw the body cast in the way, and the lion standing by the body. And they came and told it in the city where the old prophet lived. When the prophet who brought him back from the way heard of it, he said, "It is the man of God who was disobedient to the mouth of Yahweh. Therefore Yahweh has delivered him to the lion, which has mauled him and slain him, according to the word of Yahweh, which he spoke to him." He spoke to his sons, saying, "Saddle the donkey for me." They saddled it. He went and found his body cast in the way, and the donkey and the lion standing by the body. The lion had not eaten the body, nor mauled the donkey. The prophet took up the body of the man of God, and laid it on the donkey, and brought it back. He came to the city of the old prophet to mourn, and to bury him. He laid his body in his own grave, and they mourned over him, saying, "Alas, my brother." It happened, after he had buried him, that he spoke to his sons, saying, "When I am dead, then bury me in the tomb in which the man of God is buried. Lay my bones beside his bones. For the saying which he cried by the word of Yahweh against the altar in Bethel, and against all the houses of the high places which are in the cities of Samaria, will surely happen." After this thing, Jeroboam didn't return from his evil way, but again made priests of the high places from among all the people. Whoever wanted to, he consecrated him, that there might be priests of the high places. This thing became sin to the house of Jeroboam, even to cut it off, and to destroy it from off the surface of the earth. Chapter 14. Ahijah's prophecy against Jeroboam. At that time, Abijah, the son of Jeroboam, fell sick. Jeroboam said to his wife, "Please, get up and disguise yourself, that you won't be recognized as the wife of Jeroboam. Go to Shiloh. Behold, there is Ahijah the prophet, who spoke concerning me that I should be king over this people. Take with you 10 loaves and cakes and a jar of honey, and go to him. He will tell you what will become of the child." Jeroboam's wife did so, and arose, and went to Shiloh, and came to the house of Ahijah. Now Ahijah could not see, for his eyes were set by reason of his age. Yahweh said to Ahijah,
"Behold, the wife of Jeroboam comes to inquire of you concerning her son, for he is sick. Thus and thus you shall tell her, for it will be, when she comes in, that she will pretend to be another woman."
It was so, when Ahijah heard the sound of her feet, as she came in at the door, that he said, "Come in, you wife of Jeroboam. Why do you pretend to be another? For I am sent to you with heavy news. Go, tell Jeroboam, thus says Yahweh, the God of Israel. Because I exalted you from among the people, and made you prince over my people Israel, and tore the kingdom away from the house of David, and gave it to you, and yet you have not been as my servant David, who kept my commandments, and who followed me with all his heart, to do that only which was right in my eyes, but have done evil above all who were before you, and have gone and made you other gods and molten images to provoke me to anger, and have cast me behind your back. Therefore, behold, I will bring evil on the house of Jeroboam, and will cut off from Jeroboam everyone who urinates on a wall, he who is shut up, and he who is left at large in Israel, and will utterly sweep away the house of Jeroboam, as a man sweeps away dung, until it is all gone. He who dies of Jeroboam in the city shall the dogs eat, and he who dies in the field shall the birds of the sky eat. For Yahweh has spoken it. Arise, therefore, and go to your house. When your feet enter the city, the child shall die. All Israel shall mourn for him, and bury him. For he only of Jeroboam shall come to the grave, because in him there is found some good thing toward Yahweh, the God of Israel, in the house of Jeroboam. Moreover, Yahweh will raise him up a king over Israel, who shall cut off the house of Jeroboam. This is day, what? Even now. For Yahweh will strike Israel, as a reed is shaken in the water, and he will root up Israel out of this good land which he gave to their fathers, and will scatter them beyond the river, because they have made their Asherim, provoking Yahweh to anger. He will give Israel up because of the sins of Jeroboam, which he has sinned, and with which he has made Israel to sin. Jeroboam's wife arose and departed, and came to Tirzah. As she came to the threshold of the house, the child died. All Israel buried him, and mourned for him, according to the word of Yahweh, which he spoke by his servant Ahijah the prophet. Nadab succeeds Jeroboam. The rest of the acts of Jeroboam, how he warred, and how he reigned, behold, they are written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel. The days which Jeroboam reigned were 22 years, and he slept with his fathers, and Nadab his son reigned in his place. Rehoboam's wicked reign in Judah. Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, reigned in Judah. Rehoboam was 41 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 17 years in Jerusalem, the city which Yahweh had chosen out of all the tribes of Israel to put his name there. And his mother's name was Naamah the Ammonitess. Judah did that which was evil in the sight of Yahweh, and they provoked him to jealousy with their sins which they committed, above all that their fathers had done. For they also built them high places, and pillars, and Asherim, on every high hill, and under every green tree. And there were also Sodomites in the land. They did according to all the abominations of the nations which Yahweh drove out before the children of Israel. Shishak raids Jerusalem. It happened in the 5th year of King Rehoboam that Shishak, king of Egypt, came up against Jerusalem. And he took away the treasures of the house of Yahweh, and the treasures of the king's house. He even took away all, and he took away all the shields of gold which Solomon had made. King Rehoboam made in their place shields of brass, and committed them to the hands of the captains of the guard, who kept the door of the king's house. It was so, that as often as the king went into the house of Yahweh, the guard bore them, and brought them back into the guard room. Now the rest of the acts of Rehoboam and all that he did, aren't they written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? There was war between Rehoboam and Jeroboam continually. Rehoboam slept with his fathers, and was buried with his fathers in the city of David. And his mother's name was Naamah the Ammonitess. Abaydom his son reigned in his place. Chapter 15. Abijam's wicked reign in Judah. Now in the 18th year of King Jeroboam, the son of Nebat began Abijam to reign over Judah. 3 years reigned he in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Maacah, the daughter of Abishalom. He walked in all the sins of his father, which he had done before him. And his heart was not perfect with Yahweh his God, as the heart of David his father. Nevertheless, for David's sake did Yahweh his God give him a lamp in Jerusalem, to set up his son after him, and to establish Jerusalem. Because David did that which was right in the eyes of Yahweh, and didn't turn aside from anything that he commanded him, all the days of his life, except only in the matter of Uriah the Hittite. Now there was war between Rehoboam and Jeroboam all the days of his life. The rest of the acts of Abijam and all that he did, aren't they written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? There was war between Abijam and Jeroboam. Abijam slept with his fathers, and they buried him in the city of David, and Asa his son reigned in his place. Asa's good reign in Judah. In the 20th year of Jeroboam, king of Israel, began Asa to reign over Judah. 41 years reigned he in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Maacah, the daughter of Abishalom. Asa did that which was right in the eyes of Yahweh, as did David his father. He put away the Sodomites out of the land, and removed all the idols that his fathers had made. Also Maacah his mother he removed from being queen, because she had made an abominable image for an Asherah. And Asa cut down her image, and burnt it at the brook Kidron. But the high places were not taken away. Nevertheless, the heart of Asa was perfect with Yahweh all his days. He brought into the house of Yahweh the things that his father had dedicated, and the things that himself had dedicated, silver and gold and vessels. War between Asa and Bayasha. There was war between Asa and Bayasha, king of Israel, all their days. Bayasha, king of Israel, went up against Judah, and built Ramah, that he might not allow anyone to go out or come in to Asa, king of Judah. Then Asa took all the silver and the gold that were left in the treasures of the house of Yahweh, and the treasures of the king's house, and delivered them into the hand of his servants. And King Asa sent them to Ben-Hadad, the son of Tabrimmon, the son of Hezion, king of Syria, who lived at Damascus, saying, "There is a treaty between me and you, between my father and your father. Behold, I have sent to you a present of silver and gold. Go, break your treaty with Baasha, king of Israel, that he may depart from me." Ben-Hadad listened to King Asa, and sent the captains of his armies against the cities of Israel, and struck Ijon, and Dan, and Abel-Beth-Maachah, and all Kinneroth, with all the land of Naphtali. It happened, when Bayasha heard of it, that he left off building Ramah, and lived in Tirzah. Then King Asa made a proclamation to all Judah. None was exempted. And they carried away the stones of Ramah, and its timber, with which Bayasha had built. And King Asa built therewith Geba of Benjamin, and Mizpah. Jehoshaphat succeeds Asa. Now the rest of all the acts of Asa, and all his might, and all that he did, and the cities which he built, aren't they written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? But in the time of his old age, he was diseased in his feet. Asa slept with his fathers, and was buried with his fathers in the city of David, his father. And Jehoshaphat, his son, reigned in his place. Nadab's wicked reign in Israel. Nadab, the son of Jeroboam, began to reign over Israel in the 2nd year of Asa, king of Judah. And he reigned over Israel 2 years. He did that which was evil in the sight of Yahweh, and walked in the way of his father, and in his sin with which he made Israel to sin. Bayasha, the son of Hija, of the house of Issachar, conspired against him, and Bayasha struck him at Gibbethon, which belonged to the Philistines, for Nadab and all Israel were laying siege to Gibbethon. Even in the 3rd year of Asa, king of Judah, did Bayasha kill him, and reign in his place. It happened that, as soon as he was king, he struck all the house of Jeroboam. He didn't leave to Jeroboam any who breathed, until he had destroyed him, according to the saying of Yahweh, which he spoke by his servant Ahijah the Shilonite. For the sins of Jeroboam, which he sinned, and with which he made Israel to sin, because of his provocation with which he provoked Yahweh, the God of Israel, to anger. Now the rest of the acts of Nadab and all that he did, aren't they written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? There was war between Asa and Baasha, king of Israel, all their days. Bayasha's wicked reign in Israel. In the 3rd year of Asa, king of Judah, began Bayasha, the son of Hija, to reign over all Israel in Tirzah, and reigned 24 years. He did that which was evil in the sight of Yahweh, and walked in the way of Jeroboam, and in his sin with which he made Israel to sin. Chapter 16. Jehu's prophecy against Bayasha. The word of Yahweh came to Jehu, the son of Hanani, against Bayasha, saying,
Because I exalted you out of the dust, and made you prince over my people Israel, and you have walked in the way of Jeroboam, and have made my people Israel to sin, to provoke me to anger with their sins. Behold, I will utterly sweep away Bayasha and his house, and I will make your house like the house of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat. The dogs will eat Bayasha's descendants who die in the city, and he who dies of his in the field, the birds of the sky will eat.
Now the rest of the acts of Bayasha, and what he did, and his might, aren't they written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? Bayasha slept with his fathers, and was buried in Tirzah. And Elah, his son, reigned in his place. Moreover, by the prophet Jehu, the son of Hanani, came the word of Yahweh against Bayasha, and against his house, both because of all the evil that he did in the sight of Yahweh, to provoke him to anger with the work of his hands, in being like the house of Jeroboam, and because he struck him. Elah reigns in Israel. In the 26th year of Asa, king of Judah, began Elah, the son of Bayasha, to reign over Israel in Tirzah, and reigned 2 years. His servant Zimrai, captain of half his chariots, conspired against him. Now he was in Tirzah, drinking himself drunk in the house of Arza, who was over the household in Tirzah. And Zimrai went in and struck him, and killed him, in the 27th year of Asa, king of Judah, and reigned in his place. It happened, when he began to reign, as soon as he sat on his throne, that he struck all the house of Bayasha. He didn't leave him a single one who urinates on a wall, neither of his relatives, nor of his friends. Thus Zimrai destroyed all the house of Bayasha, according to the word of Yahweh, which he spoke against Bayasha by Jehu the prophet, for all the sins of Bayasha, and the sins of Elah his son, which they sinned, and with which they made Israel to sin, to provoke Yahweh, the God of Israel, to anger with their vanities. Now the rest of the acts of Elah, and all that he did, aren't they written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? Zimrai reigns in Israel. In the 27th year of Asa, king of Judah, did Zimrai reign 7 days in Tirzah. Now the people were encamped against Gibbethon, which belonged to the Philistines. The people who were encamped heard say, Zimrai has conspired, and has also struck the king. Therefore all Israel made Omri, the captain of the army, king over Israel that day in the camp. Omri went up from Gibbethon, and all Israel with him, and they besieged Tirzah. It happened, When Zimrai saw that the city was taken, that he went into the castle of the king's house, and burnt the king's house over him with fire, and died. For his sins which he sinned in doing that which was evil in the sight of Yahweh, in walking in the way of Jeroboam, and in his sin which he did, to make Israel to sin. Now the rest of the acts of Zimrai and his treason that he did, aren't they written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Israel? Omri reigns in Israel. Then were the people of Israel divided into two parts. Half of the people followed Tibni, the son of Ginath, to make him king, and half followed Omri. But the people who followed Omri prevailed against the people who followed Tibni, the son of Ginath. So Tibni died, and Omri reigned. In the 31st year of Asa, king of Judah, began Omri to reign over Israel, and reigned 12 years. 6 years reigned he in Tirzah. He bought the hill Samaria of Shemer for 2 talents of silver, and he built on the hill, and called the name of the city which he built after the name of Shemer, the owner of the hill, Samaria. Omri did that which was evil in the sight of Yahweh, and dealt wickedly above all who were before him. For he walked in all the way of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, and in his sins, with which he made Israel to sin, to provoke Yahweh, the God of Israel, to anger with their vanities. Now the rest of the acts of Omri which he did, and his might that he showed, aren't they written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Israel? So Omri slept with his fathers, and was buried in Samaria. And Ahab his son reigned in his place. Ahab reigns in Israel, marries Jezebel. In the 38th year of Asa, king of Judah, began Ahab, the son of Omri, to reign over Israel. And Ahab, the son of Omri, reigned over Israel in Samaria 22 years. Ahab, the son of Omri, did that which was evil in the sight of Yahweh, above all that were before him. It happened, as if it had been a light thing for him to walk in the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, that he took as wife Jezebel, the daughter of Ethbaal, king of the Sidonians, and went and served Baal, and worshipped him. He reared up an altar for Baal in the house of Baal, which he had built in Samaria. Ahab made the Asherah, and Ahab did yet more to provoke Yahweh, the God of Israel, to anger than all the kings of Israel who were before him. In his days did Hiel, the Bethelite, build Jericho. He laid its foundation with the loss of Abiram, his firstborn, and set up its gates with the loss of his youngest son, Segub, according to the word of Yahweh, which he spoke by Joshua, the son of Nun.